He saved Rome, then he opened his mouth and lost everything. Not to an enemy, not to a rival, to the people who loved him. The crowds who had cheered his name, the senators who had praised his victories, the city he had bled for twice. He walked into the Roman Forum as the most celebrated soldier alive. He left as an exile. His name was Coriolanus, and he talked himself out of everything he had ever earned. This is Law 4. Gnaeus Marcius, known as Coriolanus, was a great military hero of ancient Rome. He won battle after battle, saving the city from calamity time and time again, because he spent most of his time on the battlefield. Few Romans knew him personally, making him something of a legendary figure. In 454 BC, Coriolanus decided it was time to enter politics. He had reputation, he had the record, he had everything a Roman needed to ascend the consulship, the highest political office in the Republic. There was just one tradition standing between him and power. He had to address people, to speak to the crowds in the forum, to ask their vote, and Coriolanus, the undefeated general, the man who had never lost a battle, had no idea how to lose with his words what he had won with his sword. He bragged about his victories so relentlessly that he earned a reputation for arrogance. He told the crowds they were beneath him, that they should be grateful that the Rome owed him, not the other way around. Every word he spoke dug the hole deeper. The crowds turned, the senators distanced themselves. His enemies, who had been powerless against him on the battlefield, simply let him keep talking. He was banished from Rome, the man who saved the city destroyed by his own mouth. Now compare that to a king who understood this law completely, or you could say the owner of this law, King Louis XVI, the exact Sun King who had his finance minister arrested. The exact story, the exact king, but a different story. Here, King Louis XVI of France, also known as the Sun King, used brevity and silence to maintain absolute power. He became famous for one single phrase, "I shall see," which he deployed whenever he asked or he was asked to make a decision. 3 words, not a yes, not a no, not an explanation, not a justification. "I shall see." And in those 3 words, ministers were left uncertain, courtiers were left guessing, rivals couldn't prepare a counter move because they didn't know what move was coming. And when you're silent, you make other people feel uncomfortable because they dislike uncertainty. People want to know what you're thinking. When you control your words, they cannot figure out what you mean or intend. Louis XVI ran the most powerful court in Europe for over 50 years. He did it largely by saying almost nothing. While Coriolanus filled every room with his voice, Louis XVI filled every room with silence. One man was exiled, the other one was called the Sun King. This is Law 4 of the 48 Laws of Power. Always say less than necessary. When you're trying to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear and less in control. Even when you're saying something banal, it will seem original if you make it vague, open-ended, and sphinx-like. Power is in many ways a game of appearances. When you say less than necessary, you inevitably appear greater and more powerful than you are. Learn the lesson. Once the words are out, you cannot take them back. Keep them under control. Every word you add is a clue, a weakness exposed, a position revealed, an opening for someone to find the gap and walk through it. The most dangerous people in any room are never the loudest. They are the ones you cannot read. You have seen this law play out your entire life without realizing it had a name. The executive who answers every question with a measured pause and 3 sentences, while everyone around them over-explains. The negotiator who makes an offer and then goes completely silent, letting the other side feel the discomfort with concessions. The person in a conflict who says the least and somehow ends up with the most power in the room. The following law has been completely and instinctively used by Andy Warhol. He managed to fascinate interviewers by making only vague, mysterious comments, causing people to search endlessly for meanings that may have not even existed. He didn't say less because he had nothing to say. He said less because he understood that mystery is more powerful than explanation, that silence makes people lean in, that the person who speaks last or barely at all controls the entire conversation. That was Law 4. Tomorrow, Law 5, about the one thing that works for you while you sleep, fights battle for you before you arrive, and can be destroyed in a single afternoon. Your reputation. Thank you for watching.